you try to define a leader, it's really looking at someone who is taking charge or taking a step forward. When you think of leader, the most immediate examples that come to mind are the leaders we know, the positional leaders, the leaders in the army generals, the presidents, the parents, us as parents, you know, being leaders in our homes. And what do we know ourselves for? We do a lot of ordering. I do that a lot in my home, ordering my teenage daughter and son. We give a lot of direction. People are going to automatically look to you as the person who can give the answers. And this is very seductive. It is very, very seductive. One of my professors at the Harvard School used to tell us, please do not allow yourself to be seduced. Because what happens when everyone is looking at you for leadership, for protection, for guidance, for order, what happens when you're unable to give this direction? What happens when you're unable to give this order? So, in many times, if you notice, if you're running an organization or you're chairing a team, you'll notice that when you walk into the room, the first thing people do is they will look to you. People actually, if you're sitting around at them, they will turn to the face where the chairperson or chairwoman or chairman sits, and they will look to you to give the start. They'll hope you have all the answers. And we do get seduced. We feel we are the visionary. We feel we are the leader. We are the one they have been waiting for. You've heard of that. I'm the one they have been waiting for. The moment you are appointed, the first things we do is jump into that traditional role because that's what's expected of us. And like we've been coached and nurtured into that, we find we are jumping into this role. I remember when we were at school, we did a story, we did a book on darkness at noon, I think, and there was the whole Pavlov's dogs. I don't know if any of you remember that. Pavlov's dogs, at lunchtime, the bell wouldn't even have to ring. They would automatically go for food. You know, on the hour, they were coached, and because as puppies, they'd been trained, they didn't even have to ring the bell anymore. At 8 a.m., they were ready for their breakfast, at noon, and at 6. And we as humans have also fallen into that routine. We do look up to people to guide us and to protect us and to lead us. And of course, it can be very frustrating because often when you're leading from that sense, you do get a lot of pain and anger when people are not following. You know, we also had a professor who would say, we have so many leaders without followers. Why do people want to lead when there are no followers, you know? But we get so angry and frustrated when we find people are not doing as we would want them to do. And that's why you find people saying, I'm the only one who can bear this vision, or I'm the only one who knows what to do. And before long, you get stuck. If you're not in the office, nothing will move. If you're not at your desk, nothing will move. We have seen people who have failed to go on leave for years because they're the ones who know the answers. Be very afraid if you're in that position. Be very afraid if you're the one who has to unlock every problem. If nothing can move and everything is waiting for you to take a decision, be very afraid because it does lead to burnout. It does lead to a lot of pain. It does lead to a lot of anger on our part, but also leads to confusion and pain from the other side where people are not getting that sense of direction that you had promised in your doings. And so my questions have been, what can we do differently? What can I do differently? I left my work in 2016 and went back to study. I had all these questions. I wanted to ask about leadership, and I said, why not go to the best school in the world to try and find out these answers that I was seeking? These questions, so many unanswered questions. But unfortunately, when you get to Harvard, you end up having the same answers, questions hit back at you, because it's back to you as an individual. What is your view on these issues? How would you do something differently? And so my question that I'm posing to you is, how would you change that narrative in your own work, in your own family, in your own life? And I have 3 or 4 areas that I'm going to share with you based on the work I've done. So one of the things that I wanted to look at, because often we look at the external for the solutions, but the solutions should really come from us. So one of the things that I've looked at in my journey is it's not about them. It has to start with me. One of the things I'm seeing is I have to adopt new ways of working. I have to adopt new attitudes. I have to adopt a new culture because it starts with me. And we all know that. We all hear that. It starts with you. But I'll give you an example. When I was a consultant, for a long time in my career, I worked as an independent consultant. I had this idea of perfectionism. I had this idea that unless I wrote the report, unless I completed the report, it could not be submitted. I am the one who knew the best analysis. I'm the one who knew the way to write the reports. And I had these sayings, you're only as good as your last report. You cannot submit something that is not, so good. And you know what happens? It locks you up because you're so tied into this virtue of perfectionism, into this cycle of I have to be perfect, I have to be the one with the answers and the one with the solutions. And you know what happened? I was not able to grow as a consultant. I did grow a bit, I did a lot of work, but I was so busy. Many times I would find myself at my desk at 6 a.m. I'm still writing a report. 2 days straight, I'm working, I'm writing reports, I'm not completing my assignments on time because you do get burnt out. Because yes, you're good, yes, people want you, but because you're not able to deliver on time, people are starting to question, why are your reports coming late? But they'll go in perfect, yes, they'll go in well, they'll go in good, but they're late. And so I had to learn, one of the things I've had to learn to do is to change my attitude. Of course, the first thing I thought, can I clone myself? It's not possible. None of us here can clone ourselves. I know science is growing so fast, but none of us can clone ourselves. So I've had to learn that it doesn't have to be me. It's good. It doesn't have to be perfect. Let it get done. Getting something done is better than not getting it done at all. So I have had to change my attitude around perfectionism and around being the one with the best writing, the best ideas, and the best insights. But another interesting thing that has been happening in the last few years as I grew higher and higher in rank is that you notice that people look to you and we encourage it. I talked earlier about seduction. You're being seduced. You encourage it. And so if people don't come to you, you're asking, why haven't you asked me for answers? We need to learn to let people, to trust people. So I have had to learn to trust people. I've had to learn not to question when someone does something wrong. I have had to learn to agree that we have gotten something good, let's move with it. But I've also had to learn that when I give ideas, people at times tend to jump. If you've seen a traditional leader in the sense of leadership, when you give your ideas, people will immediately do that as if it's the only solution. People won't look elsewhere. They will look to you all the time. And my challenge is to you. What attitudes do you have to change? What behaviors do you have to change? What has to change in you for you to enable others to grow? And that's the journey I'm walking right now. I have had learned to step back from perfection, but I'm also learning that when I give ideas, people should not take it as a command. Because every time you say, let's do this, people will immediately run into action. Before you know it, a whole establishment has set up because Alan said 1, 2, 3. And so I'm learning to be careful with how I voice my requests or my ideas so that I don't start an avalanche. But it's a tricky one and it's a tough one because remember, like Pavlov's dogs, we've been coached to do the work and to push. But I've also learned that I have to trust people, that I have to let them get on with what they are doing, and that I should not take back the work. We have a famous saying of taking back the work. At home, if you ask someone to do something and they don't do it well, you then do it. Or if you're setting up the tents and you feel they have not done it well, you find yourself before long, you're climbing up to set up the tent. And yet you have a whole team. So I have to learn not to take back the work. Those are some of the things I'm learning to do. Because often because you think you can do it best, you want to step in and do it. But tell me, there are some things I'm struggling. I'm not the best at IT. So now if the IT is not working, I cannot jump in because I don't know it that well. So I'm learning to trust people and to step back and to avoid taking back the work. The second thing that I'm learning on this journey is to create a village by choosing the people around me very, very carefully. If you look at all the great leaders in history, I think one of the most famous things that is often unspoken about is the people they surround themselves with. Often we focus on the leader. So for Wakisa Ministries, we made focus on Vivian, but there's a whole army around Vivian. And Vivian perhaps has selected that army carefully, and that's likewise what I'm trying to do, to really try and select people that are around me. We have a famous professor who would always say, choose your friends carefully, but your enemies even more carefully. I'm trying to choose my village very carefully, and that's one of the things that has helped me through Girls for Girls to spread this word around the world. I would never have been able to do this on my own. But together with 8 ladies, we founded Girls for Girls. It was a bold dream. We want to reach 1 million girls by 2025. We know that we can mentor girls and share our stories. But can you imagine what it would take me to replicate myself, to go around the world sharing my story? And what we have done instead is I've looked at how best to create a village, how best to create a group of people who can actually carry this vision forward. And some of the things that I've learned that help, look at people who share your values. I'm looking for people who share my values. I'm looking for people who share my purpose and vision, and perhaps my energy. I'm very energetic. So I'm looking for people who share that energy, who are positive, not people who are going to be grouching and complaining, but people who want to make a difference. And I believe everyone in this room wants to make a difference. We all want to do something that is changing our communities, that is changing our world. But we also know that we will get burnt out if we do it in the old way of I have to lead and I have to do everything. And so I'm really very deliberate about the people I surround myself with. I'm struggling with the enemies bit. But on the friends and people who share my passion, I think I'm doing quite well. And for me, the key issue is that once I have these people around me, let me trust them. So there's a whole process of building trust. Let me trust you that you're going to be able to do this well. That there's a level of a minimum level that we are agreeing, and that there's clarity of purpose. But my challenge now, and the unanswered question I have, is how do I translate this down the line? Because many times when you select someone to work with you, remember what I said at the beginning, the moment you're appointed into a position, you feel I am the one, I am the vision bearer for this, I'm the leader. So even the people I'm working with, often you find the tendencies coming through. You find someone is actually pushing to be the one leading. And I'm telling them, look, who are you working with? That's the first question I now ask people. Who are you working with? Who is with you on this? You know? I prompt, I engage, I challenge, I am pushing. Who is with you on this? How are you working with others to get this done? Because what happens is because those tendencies are with us, people will tend to fall back onto what they know best, which is leading from the front. What we are trying to create is a shared leadership model that allows us all to shine together, to share this joy together, and to grow together. And so for me, that is a key lesson. And as I've said, one of the challenges I'm struggling with is how do I keep the enemies as close as I would keep, say, the friends. And that means allowing and opening myself for criticism, taking feedback, allowing to hear that voice that's coming from even the person in the team who may not hold a high influential position, but wants to share something. And so we are trying to create those spaces where people can speak and engage. It leads me into the third area. So I've talked about myself, my what I have to change about myself, my attitudes, my insights, my approach. I've talked about creating a village. And the third one is, of course, about the system. COVID has taught us so much. COVID has taught us a lot about, we always thought we had things foolproof, but things fall apart when you get such a challenge of this magnitude. And I know each of your lives have changed. My life has changed. COVID came when we were at a time in my organization at TradeMark, we felt we were climbing, we were on top of the world. We were doing so much, we were actually expanding. We were going to get new territories where we were working. West Africa was calling. We just had a team visit from West Africa, and they wanted us to go and spread the good news of the work we do because we do good stuff. We ease the cost of doing business around the region. We build roads, we build bridges, we do trade systems. Like recently with the truck drivers, we did a system that helped ease the truck drivers because of the COVID pandemic. We have built a system that has allowed truck drivers now to cross safely into countries because their records can be tracked. Because otherwise countries were closing up borders. And yet we are a landlocked country, for instance, in Uganda. All our foods, medicines, PPE comes from somewhere else. So we create systems. But when COVID came, of course we were challenged, and these pandemics can set us back, you know. The most important thing is if you have in place the appropriate systems and platforms for shared leadership, you're going to have people rallying around and sort of overcoming. But what happens with a pandemic is you tend to fall back into the old ways. And so we found that in the beginning months of COVID, we were working 24 hours, we were not sleeping, everyone was hurt, pained, angry, why aren't things moving? We're trying to make change, can people see we are doing this? And so you find that you fall back into the characteristics ways of leading from the front. And for me, the challenge within the corporate structure, how to fight that hierarchy, how to flatten those steps so that people feel free to give ideas. So the ideas don't come from me or from the other leaders in the organization. So that even the messenger and the T person and the driver feel free to be able to generate ideas. If any of you have those systems in place, I would be glad to hear about them. Because for me, it remains an unanswered question. We have a number that we have put in place, that we create spaces where people can speak and engage. But at times people are shy because, again, that whole leader-follower mentality comes in. What we need to do is show people that we are all together in this, that shared vision, reiterating it, and getting people to continue to believe in what we are doing. And then the last one that I wanted to share is the whole issue of transitioning, stepping back, and stepping out. Within the traditional leadership mold, it's so hard for us to step back because you believe you're the vision bearer or the one that has the answers. It's so hard for you to take a step back and say, what if I were not here? What would happen? And so for me, that's a challenge that I'm now working with. As I grow systems, for instance, within Girls for Girls, we recently have transitioned to what we call 2.0, Girls for Girls 2.0, which is now a 5-year strategy to take us into the 1 million girls that we want to achieve. But one of the issues has been we as the founders fighting the founders syndrome and stepping back. We know we have created a team, but there's always the fear of what if they fail us? So you keep jumping in to rescue. You know the rescue mentality. You keep jumping in, stepping in. You're always wanting to think, oh my God, it's going to fail, let me step in. So one of the things I'm struggling with now is how to step back and keep out and let people go. But it doesn't mean I fold my hands. It doesn't mean that I abdicate responsibility. It means that I put in place systems for shared accountability and responsibility. It means that I encourage people to own this thing as well. They may not have founded it, but that I inspire them to own it. It means that when I trust them, I don't actually come back and take back the power that I had sort of handed over. It means that I use the power that I have very carefully, that I do not overstep, that I do not cow people, that I do not make them fear to actually move forward. But I also must learn to create a way out for myself, my exit. How do I exit this beautiful thing that I am so passionate about? How do I step back? I'm not looking to folding my hands. I am not looking to sitting back, but I'm trying to find that space where together with the team that I've created and we have grown together, where I can still be of value and use. Because you see, the fear we have is that if I hand over this power, I'll cease to be relevant. And yet it's not the case. There's always a space, but I must learn to use the power I have more judiciously and more carefully.